Hello, hello, here we go, it's the Cop-Eye Podcast.
What is happening, everyone, and welcome back to another Cop-Eye Podcast. We haven't been around for a couple of weeks. I've had a few technical difficulties with, just been talking to Farrell about iPads and laptops and whatever else, so I've got my iPad back and work in action, so we're back again. I'm Mick, and joined by Farrell, Keeling from the Empire of the Cop. How are you doing, Farrell?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. I think my rage and frustration has settled somewhat overnight. But I'm sure we'll have plenty to discuss about that game. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think woke up this morning and I was just like trying to look on the bright side of life, as the Monty Python song goes. Like just looking at it, going, well, referee didn't have loads of players. Got a point. I'm just trying, yeah. But we'll let's get stuck into it a little bit. And I just thought I haven't got really a script to go off because I thought I can't be bothered because I was that pissed off last night. But I wanted to do a video on it, and you happily jumped on with me, which I'm really thankful for. So thanks so much for jumping on. But we'll just start at the beginning then. And Harry Kane bags a goal, 13 minutes in. I mean I suppose it was a good goal in a way, but that was kind of a sign of the start of the game and the way things were going in terms of midfield. Obviously, we didn't have Van Dijk, we didn't have Fabinho, we didn't have Henderson, didn't have Thiago, we didn't have Curtis Jones. So a midfield of Tyler Morton making his full debut alongside Naby Keita and Milner, who've just came back from injuries. I think that kind of said a lot, didn't it? In terms of, I think we were quite hopeful. I was quite hopeful anyway before the game kicked off. Like Morton's done well at the San Siro and done well when he came off the bench, but starting a game of that magnitude alongside two fellas who've just came back from injury was a big ask, wasn't it? And I think that game kind of proved that and showed that.
No, it's a huge ask. I think you've alluded to it. Certainly, their context is absolutely key here. You know, we played at a completely makeshift midfield. We're not saying, we didn't have Henderson and, to argue there and we sort of go, okay, Fabinho's off. You can sort of rely on, one that likes Milner or Keita to sort of come in and shore up the midfield a bit. A completely different midfield against a team that is largely in form of late under Antonio Conte. And certainly you wouldn't look at Tottenham's midfield and go, that's an easy one for, three lads who haven't played really together as a unit to come in and make a statement. I mean, there's been some criticism of like Morton, which I think is slightly unfair. I didn't think he played a bad game, to be honest. He's doing the best he can. If you think about it, when we look at sort of how Fabinho plays, the two midfielders tend to sort of bomb on a bit because they can know reliably you've got Fabinho behind you and he can cover pretty much anything. The man's, he's a lighthouse. He's incredible. You're sticking a 19-year-old there against an Antonio Conte midfield. Yes, the argument we made, he's not had a full year with them yet, but I think frankly the turnaround's been magnificent. Tottenham are absolutely no mugs under Antonio Conte. They were good value for the result. They argue, of course, certain decisions went their way, which would have influenced the game.
Yeah, and I think like we've got to come to that decision, the big decision, because it happens not long after the goal. And obviously, I think they had a few chances before the goal where they kind of got through. There was a good block from Ibu Kanate to block one from Kane, which is a great, basically a goal-saving challenge. But then they get another one and they score from it. But then it was 7 minutes later, Harry Kane, I don't know if he was a bit high on life because he'd just scored his first goal for however long and whatever, but he flies into Andy Robbo. And I think we all collectively agree that it was a red card, like the easiest red card you'll ever see. And then looking this morning at like some tweets from the Athletic saying that the referee didn't give it because Robertson was jumping out of the way, and it's like, well, so I don't understand that logic. I really don't, because the intent and the force and the challenge from Kane was there for all to see. And obviously we're going to come on to the Robertson red card, which is later in the game, but if you're going to look to VAR for the Robertson challenge later in the game, you've got to look to VAR for that Kane challenge, haven't you? It's a no-brainer.
There's got to be consistency. I think, we spoke about this prior to the podcast, and we sort of said, there's no question in our minds that Robertson's challenge was a red card. We can accept that. But it's difficult to accept that the same level of consistency wasn't then applied to the initial Kane tackle. VAR didn't even intervene, didn't even invite Paul Tierney to come and have a look at the various different angles they have available, and they have these. This is the whole point of VAR. They have these different angles available to them. Yeah. You can make an argument for Paul Tierney and go, okay, his view might have been slightly obstructed, so he's not sure about how hard that tackle was or the nature of it. But VAR have a clear side-on look and can go, right, that's a studs-up challenge on the leg. If his leg is, like Klopp said it, everyone said it, if his leg's planted, his leg is broken. That's you're out for a season. You're losing the best fullback in Europe, left back in Europe, I should say, for a season. I mean, it's. I mean, you've written a tweet with this on yourself, Nick, and you sort of, you made the point that because so Robertson would have had to keep his leg planted and risk breaking his leg for it to be an unfair, illegal challenge. I think there's someone else wrote a tweet basically saying it's like saying if a car mounts a pavement and tries to run you over, if you happen to jump away in time, the driver then isn't liable for dangerous driving.
I've seen that. That's hilarious. It's a cool analogy. I mean, obviously, it's a bit more extreme, a car flying towards you than a player, but the logic still stands in terms of the person who's on the receiving end. If they somehow manage to have the whereabouts to kind of move out of the way in time to avoid a bad injury, that shouldn't be taken into account. That should be. It should be a blanket rule on force, intent, whatever else is beyond that challenge. That should be the deciding factor. And obviously the Robertson challenge later on, which was a red card, but like you said, I think it was Chris Kavanagh in looking at VAR, why he's invited the referee to go and have a look at the Robertson challenge, but not gone to look at the Harry Kane challenge. And that's all we want. We want consistency. Obviously, there's been loads this year, like the Newcastle game against Man City, where Ederson clears out Fraser and there's no penalty. Like, it's happening everywhere, and we brought VAR in to kind of, I don't know, solve these grey areas. But for me, it's creating more grey areas, and I think that's the problem, isn't it? I think that's what we want, the consistency, but if anything, it's creating more because the technology's there, but it's not being applied in the correct way, or it's not being viewed by the correct eyes.
I think that it's the distinction that has to be made. I think Jamie Carragher made the point on Sky Sports after the game. It's not VAR itself that is the issue. It's the people using it. It's the same problem we have on the pitch with the actual on-pitch referees. It's the people who are making these decisions, or who aren't making these decisions, because you have to wonder how on earth, if you've looked at a side-on angle of Harry Kane's challenge, how on earth that isn't a red card. I don't know if you've seen this, saw on Twitter, Peter Walton's justification for a yellow card for that challenge. I think it was something along the lines of referees have in their mind certain players they need to keep an eye on who are capable of producing these kind of challenges so they can proactively act in the game to punish this. And he made the point that obviously Harry Kane isn't one of these players. I think he got red carded. Was it Shrewsbury or such? I think it was like a cup game. It was the last time Harry Kane got red carded. But then it sort of raises the argument, well, so if you produce a season-ending tackle because you're not the kind of player to do those kind of tackles, it should be ignored. What kind of justification are we going for here? A bad tackle's a bad tackle. It doesn't matter if it's, Ben Davies or Mo Salah, or if it's Harry Kane or Hugo Lloris. It's a bad tackle. You should be sent off for that because you're endangering the player's safety. It's boggling, to say the least. Absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, I saw that as well this morning. I was just like, so. But Harry Kane's been. I mean, it's not the same, but in terms of like endangering opponents, there's been that whole thing where there's like clips of him like backing into opponents and they jump off the back of him and fall over, and there's been a few bad injuries from that. So. I understand.
Where's the proactiveness in there?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I understand that there's going to be obviously a viewpoint from referees going into a game going, right, say 20 years ago and it's Arsenal versus Liverpool, it's like Gerrard and Vieira, they're going to be the two to look out for in this one. They're going to be flying into each other and whatever else. That's in your mind, but now I don't understand why, like you said, if it's Harry Kane or if it's Mo Salah or whoever else, if Mo Salah did that, I'd be like, well, if he gets a red card, it's fine. It's just
it's
being
fair
like,
enough, isn't it? It's a bad tackle.
But then the Spurs fans going, well, look at this one from 2 years ago. You should have had a red card and you didn't get it. It's like, that's not like the rules now. It's completely different year on year. They seem to be getting a bit stricter on. It doesn't matter even if Harry Kane didn't touch Andy Robertson and he went in with that force. In the letter of the law these days, it still should be a red card, but he still did brush his leg. It was just, albeit Robertson did have a bit of cleverness to kind of lift his leg away as quick as he could, just because he knew Harry Kane was flying in, and it's not right, is it?
The laws contradict themselves because, I mean, take the handball law, which is famously controversial. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's my understanding certainly that intent doesn't really matter a great deal if there is a handball. So if you don't value intent in a handball situation, why would you proactively value intent when it comes to a dangerous tackle, which is something far more controversial because you're endangering your opponent's safety? You know, if we're not valuing intent for something as comparatively little as a handball, why on earth are referees actively considering which players are problems and taking that into consideration in their decision making? It doesn't match up with their own rules, their own sort of logic in decision making. So it's something that definitely needs to be seriously looked at because it's slightly worrying that sort of thing is taken into account for things that are as serious as endangering player safety, which you'd think would be critical or at the forefront of a referee's sort of decision making, at the forefront of those at Stockley Park's decision making.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing when you just like sit down and talk about it. It's like, well, I understand like a pressurized situation, you've got to make a split decision, but not inviting the referee to go and have a look at it and go, because that's what they usually do. If it's kind of questionable, the person in VAR just kind of sits on the fence and go, yeah, go ahead, you might as well, because I'll sit on the fence, you go and have a look, you're the on-field referee, you get a look at it, and then if from there you decide it's not a red card, which would have been the wrong decision if he didn't produce a red card, but at least you've went to have a look at it and you can make your decision based on that. I just think there's too many variables that come into it these days. It depends on what stadium you're at, what referee it is. There's so many things that come into it, which shouldn't happen. Because I think if you go back last year and that happens in an empty stadium, does Kane get a red card? I don't know. I don't know if the fans play a part. I think they probably do. So there's a lot of things there which it isn't right, and I think those do need looking at. And I think Klopp kind of said it very nicely to Tierney at the end of the game, where he just said that I've got no problem with any referee apart from you, and I think he said something along the lines like you've never played football before, which is probably another cliche shout that a lot of us do use, but it's a valid one because he obviously just hasn't got a clue that that's a really bad tackle and it needs to be looked at.
It's good you bring up the no football thing because obviously with the Jota challenge. I think Jermaine Defoe sort of speaking after the game, sort of pointing out, and I think if anyone's well placed to talk about sort of a striker's mentality, you'd argue Jermaine Defoe certainly is. But sort of making the point that when you're slowing down for a penalty, if you're slowing down to take a shot, that's a natural decision by a striker to position yourself to take a shot. So you get Paul Tierney's sort of argument that Jota's slowed down to sort of get contact from behind him to get the penalty is absolutely farcical. I don't know. I'm in the same camp as you. I'm reluctant to openly sort of go, we need sort of almost. I see the argument, but ex-footballers or someone who intimately understands the game, understands sort of the machinations of it, like a footballer's mind. But just the idea that he's just like to deliberately get the penalty, don't get me wrong, some players do that. But I think if you look with the benefit of VAR, you can see with his whole body language, sort of how he sort of, I think you can almost see his legs sort of going back for a shot before he shoved to the turf. But sorry, sidetracked.
I don't even think he slows down. Honestly, obviously he slows down a little bit, like you said, because he's thinking, right, I need to swing my left leg at this to get. It's
not a dead stop. It's not a dead stop. It's a gradual,
Yeah, it's a gradual slowing down while he's trying to make his mind up, trying to get his eye on the ball, which foot's he going to go with, where's he going to put it, and then he gets absolutely shoved in the back by, I think it was Emerson Royale, wasn't it? So it's just, I think it's another one where it's because it's, I don't know, the ground that it's at, the time of the game, or whatever else. I think that was after our goal as well, wasn't it? So if we get that, then we go 2-1 up. So it's even more frustrating. But let's talk about the Jota goal, obviously, because I thought it was just a really quality finish. Obviously, nice pressing from us on that left-hand side, where I thought we were really dangerous yesterday. That left-hand side was really good. Robertson was a willing runner. I thought Mane was always a constant thorn in the side. And then Robbo gets through and plays an absolutely gem of a ball onto Jota's head. It was just begging to be headed into the Lloris's right bottom corner, and he did it. It was a great goal, wasn't it?
Absolutely superb. But I think it's almost remarkable, sort of people commenting after the game, sort of going how Jota gets himself in these positions where he looks like he's completely unmarked. You can kind of, it happens once or twice, you just go, it's poor defending. But it's amazing how regularly this happens. So people appreciate his sort of his accuracy that close in front of goal, but people almost don't appreciate how good his movement is. And that's absolutely critical for the forward line. It's why Klopp certainly prizes them so much. It's the movement, it's the interchanging of positions, it's just the sheer level of confusion our front three creates. It makes them, is one of the many reasons that makes them such a valuable forward line combination. But yeah, as you absolutely rightly point out, there, Robertson again superb for that, and deserves all the credit up until that sort of moment where he obviously lost his head a little bit. It's all red. So I just have a swipe.
Oh, I know. It's just that you don't. I mean, obviously he plays with his heart on his sleeve, so you kind of expect it in a little, kind of like in a way. But the way the game was going, I think just after they'd scored the second one, wasn't it, like 3 minutes after? So he was obviously just a bit fiery from that. But obviously we'll come straight to the Robertson goal, which was initially I was just thinking, this is it. I pray this is not going to be offside, because I initially thought when it got played back into him from Trent, I was like, oh, please, God, don't be offside. And they do a little check, don't they? And it's fine. But I think it's a bit of a mad one. Like, he got a goal and assist, he got a red card, and he probably was our man of the match still, because he was that good. And I think, considering the way his form was kind of has been wavering recently, and obviously seeing Tsimikas back on the side, the way that he's responded to that, obviously getting a red card isn't great, and he's going to be we miss them for a few games now, so that's even more frustrating, especially in this Christmas period. But he was on top form, wasn't he, yesterday?
No, it was absolutely remarkable, and I think bar that sort of red card, he would have absolutely well deserved to have been man in the match for that performance. I think nobody would be more disappointed than him for getting sent off, and obviously commented right off the match and held his hand up and took responsibility, and absolutely credit to him. That's I mean that's leadership right there, and it's one of the many examples of leadership that has been shown throughout the squad. Liverpool are a team of leaders, and that's one of the reasons why it is such a unique and wonderful side. These aren't players who will shirk responsibility. I think it's as you say, it's just one of those, isn't it? I think we were 2-1 up. The decisions have just gone against us. They've equalised. He's just had enough and just made a split decision that he's obviously instantly regretted doing.
Yeah.
So it's one of those moments. You know what I mean? Klopp will have gone in. He'll have instantly apologised. It's a matter over. There would have been no sort of lengthy debate about it. In the change room. If anything, I think Klopp would have come in and gone, you know what, lads, you deserve to get something out of there. Given if you look at sort of the circumstances that sort of went against us, completely near midfield, decision after decision after decision. I think it's bizarre how, if you look at sort of some of the pundits' sort of comments after the games, so everyone's gone, "Oh, Tottenham deserved the win there." I completely disagree, to be honest with you. I think if Liverpool had won that, don't get me wrong, I thought Tottenham played superbly, but I don't think many would have felt too aggrieved had we taken 3 points there. But
yeah, obviously we scored the Robertson goal, and it's literally 5 minutes later they get their equaliser, which is from Alisson. Horrendous mistake. You've just got to hold your hand up, and I'm sure he'll do the same. That it was he's come out to kick it, he's completely missed it, he's fucked up, but he'll hold his hands up. But there's been a few moments throughout that game where he's kept us in it. The save from the Dele Alli chance, which from the initial camera, you think, well, that's an absolute
a goal.
sitter. You think it's a goal initially, then you think, well, he's just missed an absolute golden chance. It's not till you see the reverse angle where you see he's got his thumb to it or his index finger, and it's just an absolute unbelievable save. And he done it. There was a few of those yesterday. Obviously, I don't know what his decision making hasn't been as good this year in terms of, because there was another moment where he came out and kind of swiped at it and missed it, and I don't know if that kind of happens because we haven't got Van Dijk there and he doesn't feel as secure. We didn't have Fabinho, so I think that kind of does fester a little bit when we're missing those type of players in the team. But in terms of keeping us in the game, Spurs could have been out of sight even before the Son goal, couldn't he?
No, absolutely. No, I think this is the thing. I think we would have been foolish to sort of go into that game underestimating them. I think they had, going into that specific game, they had 10 points in their last 12. I think it was. If anyone underestimating Spurs under Conte, absolutely foolish. At this early stage, he's completely turned them around. This is not the Spurs of old, and certainly I'd expect after a season and a summer window that to change even further. But no, my heart absolutely goes out to Alisson because he was superb. It's probably the main reason why we weren't, 5 or 6 down before the half-time break. So as you say, it's one of those things. I think he has been sort of more proactive in coming out of his box, almost because he doesn't have that reassurance of Van Dijk ahead of him, Fabinho just ahead, guarding the back line. We have to accept that, Morton is 19 years old. You can't expect Morton to play like the best defensive midfielder in the world at the moment. You can't. He's 19, far more mature than his age suggests. But, you need experience. The lad's played 2 Champions League games. That's his first sort of full. Just subbed off, I think. Was it kept on for the 90 minutes? So my mind's gone absolutely blank.
I think he was. Yeah, he got subbed off on 60, and Bobby came on.
Yeah. So I sympathise. I sympathise entirely with Alisson there, but I'd argue you have a full strength thing there with Fabinho and Van Dijk. I don't think he's as proactively coming out. It's partly because you've got a defender like Van Dijk making those decisions.
It's a safety blanket, isn't it? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it's these type of games where we're missing him, where other fans can say, well, wow, it does have not just an effect on their defensive ability, but I think has a direct influence on Mo Salah as well, because those long diagonal raking balls to Mo Salah are almost, they're taken away instantly, and that's what kind of Salah thrives on. He pulls out wide as he can on the right hand side, and 9 times out of 10, quite often in a game, Virgil van Dijk will spray a 60-70 yard pass into feet, and that kind of opens up our game. Completely changes it, and I think people maybe are starting to see that a little bit. I mean, Martin Tyler was just talking absolute shit, saying how Liverpool looked vulnerable. It's like, well, we are missing our first choice midfielders, Martin, and our best centre back, who happens to be the best in the country and the world. So I think you take any of those four out of any team, you're going to struggle. Like you said, Tyler Morton, 19, just turned 19 in October, I think, which is it's a big compliment to him that thrown him into this game. When we had Oxlade-Chamberlain on the bench, he could have happily just maybe went Keita as the 6 or Millie as the 6 and went with Ox and Keita on the side of Millie and kept Morton on the bench. But the fact that he put Morton in there, I think it's a huge compliment to him and how much he's came on the last couple of years as well.
No, I thought the back line was actually pretty good, to be honest with you. I don't think Konate really put much of the foot wrong there. Neither did Jean Matip. So I think it's a game sort of mainly contested there in the midfield. And if you're playing a completely makeshift midfield without your captain, without the best defensive midfielder, without sort of Thiago, it's just pure classy playmaking brilliance, it's going to hurt. You rip out the core of any side, even Manchester City, you rip out, De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva. You rip out, your three top midfielders. It will hurt, whatever side you are. You can just about manage if it's one or two, but the whole, especially that they won't have played. I mean, how many times will Morton, Keita, and Milner have played together? I don't think they've played together once this season, to my knowledge. I'm just trying to rack my brains for like the cup games, but I don't think they've played together once. It's.
I think that'll be the first and last, probably, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully. Hopefully, we'll have to see what happens for the COVID cases. But it's going to hurt if you consider. The more I think about it as it goes on, especially when you consider the officiating calls throughout the game, I think it's a point gained rather than 2 points lost. I think it's absolutely remarkable. We've gone away to a Conte team with a completely changed midfield, and we've nabbed a point there. And we could have nabbed all 3 points.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the stats, obviously, because, like you said before, like the commentators and whoever else saying Spurs probably deserve to win. And like just looking briefly at the stats, so shots on target, they had 5, we had 6. Shots off target, they had 3, we had 5. Blocked shots, they had 2, we had 8. And then possession, we had 56%, they had 44. I mean, that's quite down the middle in terms of possession, shots on target, corners similar. So that's quite middle of the road in terms of a 50-50 game. But I think it's in the back of your mind, in the back of everyone's mind, just how good Liverpool are in terms of we usually just absolutely dominate possession. We usually have loads and loads of shots, usually 20 plus, to be honest. On 20 shots, maybe 10 of those on target. So we usually absolutely turn the screw on in games like these. Even when we're away, we still manage to dominate the game. So I think right. So in terms of then, obviously we've covered a lot there. But who would you say your man of the match was? Obviously, I said before Robertson maybe for us in terms of goal assist, red card. Obviously, severely damages that. But who do you reckon for Liverpool man of the match then?
I'm really in two minds. It's either between Alisson or Andy Robertson. I'd probably give it to Alisson just because of the red card. I feel that's a bit harsh because he has come out and he's taken the responsibility for it. But I think Alisson keeps us in the match. I think he really does. So I'd give it to Alisson.
Yeah, it's mad because I think I would go Robbo, but it is a bit mad to think that the two that we would potentially give it to, because I think it is between Alisson and Robbo. Alisson keeps us in it. He makes an absolute gaff for the goal, and then you've got Robbo who scores an assist and gets a red card. But I think Robbo, in terms of that, like I said before, the left-hand side for us was just so key, and I think we were so sharp down that side. And I think, like I said before, like Robbo's wavering form in the maybe the 10 games before the last 5, where he starts to look back to his usual self again, which is boss to see. So I think I would give it to him, albeit he's going to be missing for a few games and we're going to really miss that. But then I thought Costas came on and done quite well as well. So it's nice to have that in reserve as well. So that's
always
nice.
Does. Best backup left back in Europe, I think you'd argue. To be honest, I don't think anyone really has anything alternatively that's better.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone can argue with that one. But I think we'll leave it there. Farrell, nice one for jumping on today.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Where can we find you we can find you on Twitter at Farrell Keeling, can't we? Is it any underscores in there, or is it just Farrell Keeling?
No, I'm plain old boring. It's just a name. And I realised actually as I was writing this thing, I was like, oh, everyone does this for the Twitter. I've just gone for the block name. At Farrell Keeling. Nice and easy. No underscores, no tricky numbers or anything. Just plain old Farrell Keeling.
Yeah, I think mine was Mick LFC with a 1 in, and I thought this is like Xbox gamer tag like 2008. So I thought let's get rid of this shit and go for Mick Moran. Obviously it was taken, so I was like I'll have to try and work in some little tricky underscores in here. But nice one again for jumping on. And
my pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
we haven't done one of these for a while. This is probably our first one for like 3 weeks. So I'll try and be a bit better at getting around to doing these. If my iPad holds up or if my laptop holds up. But yeah, nice one, Farrell, for jumping on, and we'll see you all again next time. Ta-ra.